Yo, what's going on, world? It's your boy Cuffed,
And your girl T.
and we are the Unusual Monsters Podcast. My bad for the short little hiatus, but we back in full effect. You know what it is, and as always, part of the intro for the just in case we got anybody new listening. So I kind of came with the podcast because my girl loves to listen to true crime stuff, and when it comes to the audios, it's not really my thing. But listening to her speak on it, it's intriguing, and I fucks with it. So I decided, we might as well start a podcast. So let's see what she got for us today to kick it off. If you want to introduce the episode, what you want to bring for us today?
All right, today, folks, we going to Kansas City, and in true fashion, today's name we're gonna call him the Kansas City Strangler.
The Kansas City
Who you
Strangler.
supposed to be?
That name plain, but
Uh,
you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean. It's a little plain. You know what I mean. But it's not as bad as that first one. That's always got to throw that out there.
oh
I'm
my God,
fucking with it, man. He's strangling people. Let's see how he doing it. Let's see how he get it done.
man, I'm gonna just start this off like, yo, my man is a straight menace to society. So this is kind of a long one because he just wreaks havoc. But I always like to give a backstory, so let's get into it. Alrighty. So today we're going to talk about Lorenzo Jerome Gillard Jr. I'm gonna just call him Gillard. Go by his last name throughout the story because yeah, his shit long as hell. He was born. You got something?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
He was born on May  24th, 1950, in Kansas City, Missouri. One of five children. He was born to Lorenzo Sr. and Laura Nee Brown. At an early age, Lorenzo showed signs of aggressive behavior. During his high school years, he would play sports with his brothers, and he was naturally a bigger dude, so he was like apparently big as shit, which caused him to like he would use his size and weight, and he ended up being a bully. So
Hey, yo, real quick, we hit the 2 minute mark. So, you know, we finna spark with that blunt real fast. You feel
you know
me?
what time it is.
All right, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so he was known as a bully throughout high school. He would go on to assault smaller children, pick on them, beat them up, take their lunch money, all that good shit. Uh, and due to poor discipline and poor academics and being absent from school, he basically was forced to drop out of school after the 10th grade. In the mid 60s, he would meet a young woman named Raina Hill. They would start a relationship, and by November 20th of 1968, she was pregnant. So they went ahead and got married because she was pregnant.
Man, I swear, back in the day, that was like really a thing. Like, and you know, I respect people who still do it. You know what I mean? But
Uh,
I don't think having like when you find out the person that you're messing with is pregnant, I don't think that it's the right thing to do as far as to just hop in and go
Jump
in and
in it,
get
yeah.
married. You know what I mean? I feel like if you didn't already have those thoughts before she got pregnant, then maybe you shouldn't pursue that. But you go ahead and continue.
Different times, that was the right thing to do,
Yeah, see,
quote
back then it
unquote,
was
back
different.
then.
Yeah, it's more traditional and whatever. But I get it.
Times has changed. Fuck that shit. Despite him being married and having a child on the way, Lorenzo would begin to indulge in crime and exhibit deviant sexual behaviors toward women. So, like, even though he was married, this motherfucker's out here doing his own thing. It has begun. And boy, did it begin. Shit. All right.
So he really got married because she got pregnant.
Pregnant. That was
That's
it.
the
That was
only
all. That
reason
was
why.
it. That was all. That was
Yeah.
it. All right. So these are early crimes. We ain't even got into like the real shit. So he got a bit of an extensive criminal background. Like the shit is long as hell. So bear with us. In January of 1969, Lorenzo was arrested on charges of assaulting and raping a girl he knew. The two parties would come to a reconciliation agreement, which was reached because all he had to do was apologize to the young girl and charges were dropped. In 1970,
Wow. Mistake number one. Mistake number one.
let's just throw out
Wow.
there, y'all will see a pattern of how this nigga just continuously gets away. In 1970, Lorenzo's father was convicted of rape. 2 years later, Lorenzo would be arrested again for raping and assaulting another woman, the victim claiming that he had choked her into unconsciousness. She would ID Lorenzo in a lineup, but her testimony was considered questionable and the charges were dropped. So once again, my man gets away.
I'm sorry. And what was the year for the first attack and the year for the second attack?
The first one was in 1969 and then in 1970.
So so back to back.
Back
So
to
when
back.
he started. Okay,
He started.
got you.
In 1973, Lorenzo was arrested for assaulting his wife. She told police that he had been physically and sexually abusive for all of the years they had been married. Ultimately, he was forced to pay a fine and he had to divorce his wife. So
That's all he got for sexually assaulting his wife.
no time spent.
Pay
no
a
nothing.
fine and had to get a divorce. That was it.
And that sucks just because it's like, damn, like y'all not gonna give him a little time, 6 months, nothing, like no restraining orders, is it?
Man, I understand it's way back in the day, but even back then they had to know the seriousness behind that, and the consequences got to be more than just paying a fine and just you know what I'm saying. What was it? Pay a fine and get divorced. That was it. That's crazy.
And I'll be trying to say this to the end, but I feel like as we go on, because it's happened so many times where he get away, I think it's because he is a black, like they're black. He's a black man, so given the time, maybe that shit just once again wasn't a big deal. Like, all right, let's move these people on out the way.
You know, but see, now that's where it get tricky. You would think they would take any opportunity back in the time in those days to lock up a black man. So why not lock him up? But in the same sense, you could say they didn't care because they were black. They're gonna let him just do what he do to the wife.
It's a black woman. They don't get no.
Or probably wanted him to, take it further. I'm not saying I feel this way, but some may say that they probably was waiting for him to take it further, actually kill her, then lock him up, and she be gone too.
Could be. I don't know, but it's fucked either way. In February of 1974, Lorenzo was arrested for raping a 25-year-old exotic dancer who identified him from a photo lineup, but yet again, charges would be dropped when the two parties reach a reconciliation agreement. So they keep reaching these agreements. I don't even know how that is a thing. Like that's all it takes is like he say I'm sorry, and then the charges could be dropped. I didn't know that was a fucking thing.
I had to look it up, but I doubt that's a thing today. But then again, if I'm the person that got assaulted, I should have some say so on his consequence. I guess I should have some say so. Like they ask me, do I want to press charges? If I say no, but hurt his go after his pockets or whatever it may be, I put him on probation. They kind of have to. You know what I mean?
I feel like they have to take that into consideration because at this point, y'all, I'm sorry, and he gets to go free. There is some type of fear, like he's still in the area. What if he come back? Like, am I tripping?
Right. No, I'm saying for the victims, they tripping. I mean, that's I don't see how they wouldn't want more. So it's a little weird. But go ahead though.
All right. So 5 months later, he would be arrested again for raping the 13-year-old daughter of a friend on the banks of the Missouri River. The victim would change her testimony and the rape charges would be dropped, but Gillard was convicted of sexual acts with the minor and received a 9-month sentence in the Jackson County Jail. So this is the only one where he kind of do a little.
So finally, he had to actually do a little time.
Yeah, but even then, still wild. This 13-year-old girl changed her testimony, and I don't know if maybe because she was scared and maybe didn't want to go through all of that.
Or the fact that she changed her testimony probably took her credibility away also.
True. Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
She lied.
Yeah.
After being released, Lorenzo married a second time, but his wife soon left him, filing for divorce. I can't even talk, y'all. Divorce, claiming, like his first wife, she was beaten and sexually abused. In the late 70s, he would marry a third time. So I seen the pictures of him. He ain't no catch. I don't know what he got going, but he ain't. It's not hard for him to get a woman. Like, and then to marry, like they just jumping in and marrying this fucker. Like, yeah.
I mean, what they look like?
I don't know, but you right. But he ain't. He look. Y'all see when we post love.
Hey, Fabulous said in the song one time. He said, "I barely hear no like when men ask you to marry them." You know what I'm saying? And like that's a real thing. Like when women get asked to be a man's wife, I would assume that it has changed in current times. But back in the days, the chance they said no, it's pretty slim.
Yeah, well,
and I think even now, it's probably more than half of women that are asked that question probably say yeah. I probably significantly significant percentage higher than 50. Probably. I don't.
Yeah, you know
I'm gonna
what?
look it up. That's crazy
I
though.
wouldn't know. Ain't nobody try to put a ring on this motherfucking finger, so I wouldn't know. Ain't nobody asked me, but yeah. In 1979, Gillard was arrested on charges of assaulting a young couple, raping the girl, and threatening to kill her fiance. Even though the couple ID'd Gillard as their attacker, Gillard was acquitted by a jury verdict at his trial due to the lack of evidence. I don't know how, like, they ID'd him, so I don't. I mean, they ID'd him. I don't
I mean,
know.
them IDing him is kind of them giving they word, but if you ID someone out of a lineup though,
What would be their point? This random couple just saying this man attacked him, like they didn't know him. He did, like, you know what I'm
but
saying?
lack
Like,
of
what would
evidence.
be?
So what was
Oh, they just
forensics
lying.
like back then? That was in the 70s still.
Yeah,
Okay, so that probably plays a
79.
part. It's getting closer to the 80s though. But we gotta have that as a note. We're gonna need that right there because we could keep kind of very
True
top of the
enough.
head. Because we did look it up, and we did see forensics kicking
Yeah,
back in higher. Was it?
it was on to the 90s.
That's
Actually,
what
I
I'm gonna
feel like
say.
you
It
said
was like
nine
the
to the
early
90s.
90s or
Yeah,
something, right? So at that time, they probably didn't have that type of So that's what it was.
I guess. A few months later, he was arrested for aggravated assault on his third wife, but got away with the administrative fine and a divorce.
What again?
Again.
Basically,
This shit is wild. And mind you, y'all, this is just like early crimes. This ain't even what we getting into, what the
each
whole
wife
shit is about.
he had some type of charge with them, right? And
Yes.
two of them, the first one and third one, resulted in him paying a fine and having to get divorced. That was it.
Hmm.
After him having history of doing this, they still did. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's crazy.
Yeah. In February 1981, Gillard attacked his ex-wife two different times. The first time he knocked her front teeth out, and the second time he stabbed her in the hand with an ice pick. He was arrested and charged with third degree assault, but was let go on a suspended sentence and probation. So he only had to do probation.
Man, this dude be getting off lucky.
Kansas City, I hope y'all
And he
laws
black
and tied
too.
it up, baby.
In the fact he black, make it
Yeah.
even more crazy. I ain't
I
gonna
hope the
lie. That
laws
shit
and tighten up
crazy.
there, cause sheesh, tough. And so we done jumped to that. We here in the 80s now. We done moved on finally. In November of 1981, Gillard was arrested for theft, but was released on a $3,500 bail. That same spring, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Finally, did a little prison time, and his family too. I'm gonna say his family rough too. That same year, Gillard's sister Patricia Dixon, she was a sex worker, was convicted of murdering a client of one of her clients back in 1983 and sentenced to 11 years in prison. So his
Hey, look
family
now.
is
Before you
wild
say
too.
right, you said his family wild too, right? And I say this in the line of work that she was in. There's situations where you know I never want to see somebody lose their life for nothing. You feel me? But in the same sense, there's times where like that girl who had got
Hmm.
kidnapped into sex trafficking and she ended up killing her pimp. You know what I'm saying? Like there's situations where I can understand why someone might resort to taking someone's life or to try to injure them to the point where they can't hurt them anymore, and that results in them losing their life. So, without going deep into what his sister did, the situation,
Mm.
the line of work she was in, she might have been defending herself.
True enough. Well, unfortunately, she got 11 years, and I wonder if that play a role into her race. If that's the case, like if she was really defending herself, but because she was black, she ended up getting all this time, or
Yeah, I
something
don't
like
know,
that.
cause just like the one girl, the light skinned girl, the
Yeah.
more recent one, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Her, same thing. It was clearly self defense, but she ended up doing prison time.
Mm.
Go ahead though, my bad.
All right. On Jan 10th, 1983, Gillard paroled, but was soon returned to prison after he was arrested in, I do not know how to say this, y'all, Wyandotte County, Kansas, for making bomb threats. And like that's random as hell. Not none of his MO, but yeah, maybe he was off the shits. A lot of drugs was going on back then in those times. He was released in late 1985, and in January of 1986, he got a job as a garbage man at a disposal service where his father worked there also. So he kind of played it safe for a little bit, cooled out. On December 23rd of 1987, Gillard was arrested and questioned regarding the murder of 36-year-old Sheila Ingold, during which his blood sample was taken, but he was released due to lack of evidence. In 1991, Gillard married a fourth time.
Hold on, real. The lack of evidence, what you just said,
Mhm.
what year was that?
That was 1987.
Okay, so yeah,
Hmm.
okay. So we
So
getting
just,
okay, we getting there. Go
and
ahead.
I will say, keep Sheila in mind because she's gonna come back later on in the story.
Yeah.
In 1991, Gillard married a fourth time and was promoted to company supervisor, granting him control of several garbage disposal teams in various parts of Kansas City. Yeah, wild. I was waiting on that one. That shit's wild.
Man.
In July 1996,
Why do I
Gillard.
feel like I know what he did? Go. I'm sorry.
You feel like that play into some shit? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let's see. In July 1996, Gillard's neighbor went to police claiming that she had been sexually harassed by Gillard since September of 1995. No charges were brought against Gillard, but
That's what I
him.
mean. Now with his whole history and everything,
Mhm.
I don't understand how he was even put in a position of power. That's crazy.
Different times. Like they
You know
ain't
what I'm
see this
saying?
record. No background checks was being ran back
I don't
then.
understand.
They had background checks back then.
They
That shit out of
had to.
control.
They had. I know times was way different back then, but like, and the world evolves, people evolve. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to always just discredit the office and everything. But like, they had to have background checks
Fuck all
back
this.
then.
This man has consistently, damn near every year, have
Right.
committed 2 to 3 crimes each
Now,
year.
even with that, we did look up and we did see that at certain time periods, though, when it comes to the law, they didn't have it to where if you did a crime in one state, that they can look it up in a different one.
This all takes place in Kansas City. We ain't left the state yet.
Damn,
This is all in Missouri
I'm trying
still.
to throw a nigga a
Come
bone,
on
but
now.
damn,
I mean, you can keep going. Good try, my friend.
damn, yeah,
No.
no excuses for him.
Like I said, Kansas City, tighten up. I know where I won't be fucking moving. Okay. If they laws and change, so he didn't get any charges brought against him, and that poor lady ended up just moving away out her home. Shit's fucked.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
All right, now let's get into it. In 2001, the Kansas. So I guess all this time he kind of was chill, living his life. He had this power, living his best life. And then 2001. In 2001, the Kansas City Police Department received a multi-million-dollar federal grant aimed at re-examining cold cases using new DNA technology. Aha! After examining the blood sample taken from Lorenzo back for Sheila, the murder, for 36-year-old Sheila, right?
Right.
The investigation team conclusively connected him to the murders of 6 women in the area, including Sheila Ingold, for whose murder he was considered a suspect back in 1987. In addition to that, he was also linked through circumstantial evidence to the killings of at least 6 more women killed between April 1977 and January 1993. All were between the ages of 15 and 36 and were strangled with various items, including nylon stockings, laces, and wires. All right. The bodies were found dumped in various places around Kansas City, including landfills, snowdrifts, abandoned buildings, vans, fields, and parking lots. All were known prostitutes. None were found either. Some 9 were found either fully or partially naked. All were sexually assaulted.
I hate how back in the day you could really get away with murder.
Easy.
You know what I mean?
It was mainly because it was no way to
Yeah, they
connect
ain't
the
had that
DNA.
DNA
Like
and shit,
and it's so
and
weird.
they ain't have cameras everywhere too, so you could really catch a motherfucker after the bar, after the club, in an alley, fuck them up, and as long as nobody ain't see you,
I was just gonna say, yep,
like
you good.
you good to go.
You good. As long as there's no witness, nobody out and about, like you pretty much good.
That's crazy.
Even if you did leave some evidence, like they had no way
Yeah.
of putting it
You
together.
have the DNA and shit. Now, years later, if you're still alive, you got to pay
Your
for it.
ass
They're
was
gonna
fucked,
eventually,
man.
you know what I mean? But yeah,
Yeah. All right. The murders were considered unrelated until 1994 when police forensically linked 2 of them to one another. As a result, Gillard was arrested on April 16, 2004, and charged with 12 counts of first-degree murder. All right, so now we're going to get into the victims, and as I always want to say, rest in peace to the victims and condolences to the family because, time never heals. You never go put a time mark on healing. So.
right.
The first victim we have is Stacy Swatford. She was a homeless trans woman that prostituted and who had recently moved to Kansas City. She was last seen alive on April 10th, 1977. Her body was found a week later at a vacant lot bearing signs of suffocation. Next was Gwendolyn Kinzine. I hope I said that right. She was only 15 years old. She was a sex worker as well. She was found strangled on January 23rd, 1980, a day after her father had reported her missing. When found, her neck and wrists were tightly wrapped with wire. She had been last seen by her parents a week before she was reported missing. So it don't really go into her home life, but the fact that she was out here being a sex worker at 15, clearly her home wasn't the best of,
Right.
ideas. Next was Margaret Miller. She was 17, was found strangled on May 9th, 1982. She was also a sex worker. Catherine Miller, 34, a mentally ill woman who was not a sex worker but was homeless. She was found in an abandoned building on March 14th, 1986, with a stocking wrapped tightly around her neck.
A couple of days, like 6 days after I was born.
Man. Naomi Kelly was 23, found strangled in a park on August 16th, 1986. Kelly was a student and businesswoman, as well as a single mother of two. She was forced into being a sex worker due to financial issues. Gillard had left the towel he had strangled her with near her body, so that's what they found with her. Like he is just savage. Like he's just literally a menace. Like I wouldn't even want it to live in Kansas City, Missouri during
I
this
don't want
time,
to
man. Like,
deep dive into it, but I'm curious. And I'm gonna do some research
mm,
because at those times it seems like a lot of women were into the sex worker thing.
but that like especially around the 70s and 80s, you had the crack like that's when that kind of was
Right,
taking off,
right.
and so yeah, and people needed to.
Like, was that kind of in the? Go ahead and finish.
Mm,
I'm trying to hold this thought for the end.
okay. Next was Deborah Bilvins. She was 32, was found strangled on November 27th, 1986. Her completely nude body was found in some bushes next to a church. Ann Barnes, 36, an exotic dancer and sex worker, was found strangled near the city center on April 17th, 1987. Kelly Ford, she was 20, was found strangled on June 9th, 1987. She was found almost completely naked. Body was found dumped at the edge of a cliff near one of the city parks. She was a drug addict and also a sex worker. Angela Mayhew, 19, was found strangled September 12th, 1987. Unlike the other victims, she was fully clothed on the side of the road, and despite being a sex worker, no trace of sexual assault was found during the autopsy.
He just just
Just probably maybe
killed
some
her.
rage, just probably maybe out of rage or something. And now we have the story of Sheila Ingold, who was 36, was found strangled on November 3rd, 1987, also a sex worker. Her body was found inside an abandoned van near an auto shop in Kansas City. Gillard had pretended to be interested in buying the van. He also had stole two rings from her corpse. So once she was dead, he, yeah. And another thing that comes up, he actually was having sex with these women like after he killed them too. Like that,
Damn, he's,
like yo. And then there
you
was
can get diseases from that shit too.
I am not really sure how to say this name. Hmm, Carm Carlene Hibbs. She was 30. Was found partially nude in the parking lot of an apartment building. And then Connie Luther, 29, was found strangled in a snowdrift with a noose made of laces tied around her neck on January 11th, 1993. On June 23rd, 2006, following DNA results, Gillard was charged with the murder of Helga Kruger, 26, who was found strangled in Kansas City in February 1989. An Austrian immigrant, Kruger was a convicted extortionist. So, yeah, she had a lot of shit going on her own there.
Yeah,
So, that's not funny, but yeah. Anyway, Gillard was also considered a suspect in the 1987 murder of 21-year-old store clerk Paula Davis, whose body was later found dumped in nearby Ohio. So he might have committed murders over there, but yeah. January 2007, Gillard's lawyers were able to negotiate an agreement with the Jackson County Attorney's Office. So they go with this shit. In exchange for dropping the death penalty, their client would agree to a trial without a jury, which began on March 5th of that year. Gillard was tried on 7 first-degree murder charges. Prosecution focused mainly on DNA evidence. Experts shows he had sex with the victims around the time they were killed. So, like I stated, he killed them and then had
See, he
sex
thought
with
it
them.
was sweet. He thought he gonna get away with it again because how he had did this many times before. But with his old age, when he didn't realize it, he probably didn't understand. Forensics and shit was at a whole different
Yeah.
level. He probably didn't really get that.
And that's crazy because either he
And you would
wasn't
think
paying
his lawyers would
attention.
tell him.
Yeah, I
You
was
would
just
think,
saying,
but I
yeah,
mean,
man. Throughout the trial, Gillard refused to admit his guilt and insisted on his innocence. Like, that's wild, too. So I want to say something was mentally wrong with him as well, maybe.
well, or like I said, he's so used to getting away with it, and he don't fully understand forensics. And even hearing about it, he's like, man, ain't no way in hell they can get my blood. I done did this shit
Yeah.
10 times. They
Like,
couldn't
over
do
the.
shit. They
Yeah.
can't. And the lawyer telling
And,
him, hey, look, I'm trying to tell you, man, shit done changed out here.
man,
you,
look.
you feel me? Like shit done changed out here a little bit, and he just brushing it off. That might have been what it was. But go ahead.
Well, 12 days later, Gillard was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murders of
Mm.
Berry, Kelly, Barnes, Ford, Ingold, and Hibbs. He was acquitted for killing Mayhew since only human hair and no semen was found on her body. DNA results of the hair were inconclusive. He initially served his life prison in Western Missouri Correctional Center before being transferred to the Crossroads Correctional Center in July 2019, and that's where he currently is.
Oh, so he's still alive.
He's still alive.
How old he is? Are you
I don't even know, but
he an old man. No,
he
he in
was
that
born
thing.
in 1950. It's 2022.
He up there. But check me out. He like 70.
Possibly.
But yeah, anyway, what I want to say is though, I notice in a lot of these stories how a lot of these women that get end up getting killed, whether it's either kids or sex workers. It seemed like it's kind of those are the two. Would you agree?
Yeah.
For the most part, like
It
kids
was
and
made,
sex
yeah, it
workers.
was, yeah. But even the kids were sex workers, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm not saying just in this story. I'm saying
Oh,
all the stories we've done so far.
yeah.
Yeah, it been all like kids and sex workers, right?
Crazy.
So I'm wondering, like, since it involves so many sex workers, like I'm wondering if back in those times, if that it was along with the drugs and everything might have played a part too. But if back in those times, if that was one of the first ways that women were kind of liberated, women that they kind of started to make their own money, kind of started to. I wonder if that was one of the professions, one of the first professions that women were,
Well, I don't know because you got to think about it. Prostitution has been going on since forever, the beginning of time, back in the Western days, and before that, back in the Greek days, there's forms of prostitution, like
right.
you know what I'm saying. Prostitution have been around since forever, so
Yeah,
you
so
know
probably
what I'm
not
saying.
then.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that was it. I just think it more to had a lot to deal with like the different drugs and the crack. I think the drug and the crack pandemic or epidemic, I'm probably using the wrong word there, whichever one.
Epidemic, yeah.
Epidemic is like it's during this time, and it seemed like in the 80s, like that really had a lot to do with it, and motherfuckers was really like out here tricking to get their shits.
That makes sense. And then men see the opportunity of women being like that, and they started to, be pimps and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. It makes sense. But what's his name again?
The unusual. What?
No, what's his?
Also to get into it.
No, I said, what's the killer's name again?
Lorenzo Gillard, aka the Kansas City Strangler.
Yeah, that's a good one. I fucks with it.
Yeah.
But listen, for everybody that made it this far, we appreciate y'all for tuning in.
Yes, sir.
Once again, it's your boy Cuff
and your girl T
with the Unusual Monsters podcast.
Hey.